Stop pulling weeds. Seriously, stop right now. Because everything you've been told about weed control is not just wrong, it's making your problem 10 times worse. Right now, millions of gardeners are out there pulling weeds, thinking they're solving the problem. But every single weed they yank is sending a signal to thousands more weeds to come back stronger, faster, and more aggressive than before. You're not fighting weeds, you're feeding them. But here's what's really shocking. There is a method that doesn't just kill the weeds you can see. It eliminates the ones you can't see. The ones waiting underground. The ones planning their next attack on your garden. I discovered this after watching my neighbor's yard go from a weed nightmare to a perfect lawn in just 6 weeks. While I was out there pulling weeds every weekend like a slave, he did something once and never touched a weed again. When he finally told me his secret, I couldn't believe how simple it was and how wrong I'd been doing everything. This method doesn't just save your back and your weekends, it saves your sanity. Because once you do this, weeds become someone else's problem, not yours. The people using this technique haven't pulled a single weed in years. Their yards look perfect, while everyone else is still fighting a war they can't win. So here's the question that'll change your life. What if you never had to pull another weed again? Sam kneels in the grass, knuckles white around a clump of dandelions, sweat rolling down his neck. He yanks, and the weeds snap free with a satisfying pop. For a moment, there's nothing but bare soil, a tiny patch of victory. The weekend ritual feels almost therapeutic. Pull, toss, admire the clean lines left behind. Neighbors walk by and nod in approval. The garden looks tamed, at least for now. But that feeling of accomplishment is a trick. The surface is quiet, but the story underground is just getting started. Each handful of weeds thrown into the yard waste bin is a badge of hard work, but also a sign of defeat waiting to happen. The soil, freshly exposed, looks like a blank slate. Sam stands back, hands on hips, and for a few hours, maybe even a day or two, the garden seems under control. The temptation to believe the job is done is strong. Every gardener knows this moment. The ache in your back, the dirt under your nails, the pride of seeing no green invaders poking through the mulch. It's almost addictive, that instant relief. The mind clings to the image of a weed-free bed, ignoring the small, broken roots left behind. The top layer is spotless, and that's all that matters, until it isn't. Sam's routine is familiar. Saturday mornings lost to pulling, afternoons spent chasing stubborn roots. The rhythm never changes. By the next week, the same weeds are back, sometimes more than before. Each round of pulling feels like progress, but the weeds always return, sometimes even thicker. The cycle repeats, frustration building with every pass. The garden never truly stays clean. The weeds always win. It's easy to mistake this ritual for real success. The empty patches look like proof the battle is being won. But the real story is buried deeper, out of sight. What Sam sees as victory is only a temporary pause. The weeds have a plan, and it starts the moment they're pulled. The surface may be clear, but beneath, the roots and seeds are already plotting their comeback. The satisfaction of a weed-free yard is powerful. It's also a lie. Pulling weeds might feel like taking control, but it's just feeding the problem in disguise. The real enemy isn't the green leaves above ground. It's what's happening out of sight, in the soil below. Sam leans in, fingers tracing the ragged hole where a dandelion once stood. The surface looks empty, but just below, a secret world is unfolding. Most backyard weeds do not just cling to the topsoil. They dig deep, far deeper than most people imagine. A mature dandelion, for example, can send a taproot nearly 30 centimeters, about a foot, straight down into the earth. That is not an outlier. Canada thistle, plantain, even common groundsel, can push roots 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters, sometimes 45 centimeters below the grass, weaving through loam and clay alike. What gets left behind after a quick yank? More than most realize. The green top snaps off, but the real engine, the thick white taproot, remains buried, alive and waiting. In loose sandy soil, these roots can run even deeper, slipping past rocks and hardpan, sometimes doubling their reach as the seasons pass. In heavy clay, they may twist and fork, but they rarely stop at the surface. Young weeds start with short roots, but within a year or two, those taproots can triple in length, anchoring themselves well beyond the reach of a casual pull. A cross-section of soil reveals the truth. Above ground, a tidy patch of earth. Below, a spear of root plunging down, sometimes as thick as a pencil, sometimes finer, but always persistent. Even when the top is gone, the root stumps linger, storing energy, ready to regrow. Sam stares at the graphic. 30 centimeters of stubborn white root, most of it untouched. The visible weed was just the tip of the problem. This hidden depth explains the endless frustration. Pulling weeds feels decisive, but unless the entire root is removed, the plant's core survives. The garden may look clean, but the root's silent promise is more weeds, sometimes stronger, sometimes more numerous than before. Surface victories are just that. Surface. The real battle is out of sight, buried in the dark, where roots bide their time and broken stumps plot their return. Dr. Emily Ramos stands in a greenhouse, surrounded by trays of freshly pulled weeds. She doesn't reach for a trowel or a spray bottle. Instead, she holds up a vial of clear liquid, plant hormones, extracted from the roots just minutes after they were yanked from the soil. The numbers on her chart are unmistakable. Within 30 minutes of pulling, the concentration of auxin, specifically indole-3 acetic acid, jumps sharply in the soil around the broken roots. It's not a trickle, it's a flood. Auxin, the same hormone that tells a weed to grow tall and straight, now pours out of the wounded tissue. It doesn't just stay put. It seeps into the nearby soil, where it's picked up by neighboring roots and even by dormant seeds lurking just below the surface. When you pull a weed, Dr. Ramos explains, you're not killing it. You're sending a signal, a chemical alarm that screams, "Grow back and do it fast." She points to a fluorescent graph, the auxin line spiking within the first half hour after root severing. That surge is more than a byproduct. It's a survival tactic, honed by weeds over generations. The broken root cells release stored auxin, and the plant's upper tissues respond by rushing even more hormone to the wound site. Within minutes, the remaining root stumps are bathed in growth signals, priming them to sprout new shoots or even form entirely new roots. But the story doesn't end with auxin. As the hours tick by, another player enters the scene. Cytokinins, hormones made in the root, start to rise. Dr. Ramos's lab records show the jump begins around 12 hours after pulling, peaking at 24. The auxin to cytokinin balance flips. Where auxin once kept the weed's growth in check, now cytokinins flood the system, breaking the plant's internal brakes and unleashing a wave of new buds. What looked like a fatal wound is actually a trigger for regeneration. We see a 30% increase in shoot numbers after clipping compared to untouched plants, Dr. Ramos notes, referencing field data on broadleaf weeds. The more you pull, the more aggressively the weed fights back. It's a biochemical arms race happening right under our feet. Each tug of a dandelion or thistle doesn't just remove the visible threat, it sets off a hormonal chain reaction that makes the next wave of weeds even stronger, faster, and harder to kill. The supposed victory of an empty patch of soil is, in reality, the opening move in the weed's comeback plan. For every root broken, for every stem snapped, the weeds are already preparing their next assault, armed with a cocktail of hormones and a blueprint for survival. The battle isn't won at the surface, it's just begun underground. Soil doesn't just sit quietly after a weed is pulled. The moment a root snaps, the ground comes alive. Microbes swarm the torn tissue, feasting on the sudden rush of sugars and amino acids. Within an hour, the soil's respiration rate, the amount of carbon dioxide bubbling up, jumps by 45%. That's not a small blip. It's a full-blown microbial feeding frenzy, triggered by the gardener's own hands. Dr. Raj Patel, a soil ecologist who has spent years tracking these underground surges, calls it the weed's secret weapon. He points to a series of gas exchange readings, baseline carbon dioxide levels. Then, after a single round of pulling, a spike that lasts for nearly a day. You think you're removing the problem, he says, but you're actually pouring fuel on the fire. This isn't just about carbon. As microbes break down the wounded roots, they unlock a hidden vault of nitrogen. In side-by-side plots, soils disturbed by pulling show a 12% increase in mineral nitrogen within 48 hours. That's enough to turn a sleepy patch of earth into prime real estate for new growth. The nitrogen doesn't linger. It's snatched up by any seed or root ready to take advantage. And the soil is full of candidates. Every square foot hides a seed bank. Thousands of weed seeds, some dormant for years, waiting for the right signal. The flush of carbon dioxide and nitrogen is that signal. Germination rates in disturbed soil leap by 40% compared to untouched ground. It's like flipping a switch. Seeds that would have stayed quiet now burst awake, racing to fill the empty space left by the last round of pulling. The numbers aren't just laboratory curiosities. Field trials in loamy gardens and heavy clay beds alike show the same pattern. Pull weeds, and the next wave arrives faster and thicker. In wetter soils, the surge is even stronger, with higher microbial activity and a longer window for seeds to sprout. In sandy ground, the spike fades faster, but the effect is still there. A brief, intense window of opportunity for weeds to return. Dr. Patel sums it up. Every time you clear the surface, you're not just removing weeds, you're sending an open invitation to their replacements. The cycle isn't just about roots and shoots. It's about the invisible pulse of life beneath our feet, set off by the very act of trying to control it. Until you break that cycle, the weeds will always come back, often stronger than before. Maya strides past Sam, a bag of wood chips slung over her shoulder. She doesn't bother with a trowel or a weeding fork. Instead, she kneels at the edge of the garden bed and plunges her hands into the bag, scattering thick handfuls of chips over the bare soil. "Don't waste your weekend on weeds," she says. "Just bury them." The mulch lands in a dense, even blanket, 3 inches deep, no gaps, no shortcuts. Each chip acts like a tiny shield, locking out sunlight. Without light, weed seeds can't wake up. Within 2 weeks, the difference is impossible to miss. The wood chip layer blocks more than 95% of light, and weed cover drops to less than 20%. The old cycle, pull, regrow, repeat, breaks almost overnight. Sam watches as Maya works methodically, making sure every inch is covered. She explains that the secret isn't just the material, but the depth. Less than 2 inches, and sunlight slips through. More than 4, and the soil can suffocate. The sweet spot, 3 inches, keeps the soil cool, moist, and silent. Weeds don't stand a chance. The chips themselves break down slowly, lasting for years before needing a refresh. It's not just for garden beds. Maya drags a wheelbarrow to the edge of the lawn, dumping chips in a ring around every tree and shrub. The result is instant, a clean, finished look that outlasts any round of pulling. The numbers speak for themselves. Studies show that a proper wood chip mulch can reduce weed growth by over 80% in the first month alone. For Sam, it's a revelation. No more aching back, no more endless war. Just one afternoon, one thick layer, and the weeds are gone. The weekend is his again. Sam stands at the edge of his patio, eyeing the stubborn green tufts that push up between pavers and along the driveway. The garden beds are finally under control, but the hardscape is a different beast. Weeds and cracks seem immune to mulch and thrive where nothing else dares to grow. The usual tools, such as fingers, knives, and wire brushes, never quite finish the job. Each week, the cracks refill, and the cycle starts again. This time, Sam grabs a kettle of boiling water. He pours a slow stream into the joints, watching steam curl up as the heat scalds the weeds down to their roots. Studies show that a single application of boiling water can kill up to 90% of patio weeds, especially when the soil is dry. There's no waiting for rain or chemicals, just a quick, visible result. For tougher clumps, he follows up with a homemade vinegar spray, 5% acetic acid, straight from the kitchen, doused onto the leaves. The next day, the weeds are wilted, brown, and easy to sweep away. But Sam wants more than a temporary fix. He sweeps the cracks clean, then empties a bag of polymeric sand into the joints. The fine grains settle in, and a mist of water locks them tight. Once set, this sand forms a barrier that blocks new seeds from taking hold. The cracks stay sealed for months, sometimes years. It's a low-cost upgrade that stops weeds before they start. No harsh chemicals or endless scraping required. The lawn gets its own finishing touch. Sam raises the mower blades, letting the grass stand 3 to 4 inches tall. That extra height shades the soil, crowding out weed seedlings before they can break through. A thick canopy is more than just good looks. It's the simplest, most overlooked defense against invasion. Every pass with the mower is a step toward a self-sustaining yard. Patio, driveway, lawn, each corner of the property now has its own shield. No more frantic weekend battles. The toolkit is complete. Boiling water for cracks, vinegar for stubborn patches, polymeric sand for long-term peace, and a taller lawn for quiet strength. The relief is real. Sam steps back and smiles, the old frustration traded for a quiet kind of triumph. Right now, millions chase weeds above ground and miss the war raging below. Science shows that every exposed patch of soil is an open invitation. Nature never leaves it bare for long. The real victory is invisible, outsmarting weeds by changing the rules beneath our feet. This isn't just gardening, it's a revolution in how we shape our world. What will you let grow next? Drop your thoughts in the comments.